Hi everyone, it's Steph here from the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel and welcome to another Books Beside My Bed video. For those of you who are new here, I film one of these every week where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading, and for anyone who is very familiar with the series, welcome back. This is my first reading wrap up for the month of January and for 2021 as a whole. I read a total of 13 books between the 1st and the 9th of January. 2 of those books were young adult books, 11 were adult books. There's a stack of novellas in here as well, plus some rereads. I read a total of 3,867 pages, and obviously my reading total is 13 books for the year. This year I thought I would try something different. Normally I would review the books chronologically in the order that I read them, but this time I'm going to review them from lowest rated to highest rated, and we'll see how that goes. My lowest rated book this week was Her Two Protectors by Jessa Cain. This is a 2017 romance / erotica novel that I gave 3 out of 5 stars. A little bit of context around this. I was listening to a Fated Mates podcast episode, I think it was the New Year's Eve one, and they did a Jessa Cain interstitial with a bunch of romance authors. And it was really fun. If I remember, I will leave a link to that down below so that you can check it out. And they were talking all about Jessa Cain's books. Now, Jessa Cain is an author who we're not quite sure who they are, but they just put out very short, very smutty romance books. And this one was no exception. I think I had read one Jessa Cain book before this, so I just picked up a totally random one. And honestly, the book is bonkers. The story follows Penny, who is about, I think, 18 or 19 years old in this story, and she's in a house fire, and she's rescued by 2 firemen who are immediately in love with her, and they don't particularly want to share her, but she basically says the only way you can have me is if you share me. So it's bonkers and ridiculous, but it is one of those really quick reads and you can knock them out in under an hour. No matter how slow you read, I think these ones are super fast. I'm not entirely certain Jessa Cain is for me, except the fact that they are mostly on Kindle Unlimited and mostly free and very quick to read may mean that I read more in the future. At 3.5 stars, I had New Year's Eve by Samantha Young. This was a 2020 novella that she pushed out through her newsletter, I believe. I think that's where I got it from and it was free. It is the story of Ryan and Joe. Ryan's younger sister married Joe's son, and in that time, Ryan and Joe have sort of had this unspoken attraction to each other. And then one New Year's Eve, Ryan's sister conceives to strand both Ryan and Joe in a remote cabin to celebrate the holidays together and finally work out whether or not they can have a relationship together. Again, this one is super short. It probably would have worked better as a longer novel, but for what it was pretty good, and for the short amount of time that we spend with these characters, we do get a decent amount of backstory and character development and relationship development with them. I also gave 3.5 stars to Her Wicked Marquess by Stacey Reid. This is book 2 in the Sinful Wallflowers series. It is a 2020 release. I think it came out right at the tail end of December, and I had a review copy from NetGalley. It is a historical romance, and right off the bat I'm going to say that there is a trigger warning for a rape that is mentioned that happened before the book's events and happens off page, but it does come up time and time again as part of a motive for one of the characters' actions. So be aware of that going into it because it does come up often. It is the story of Marianne Fitzwilliam, who is a wallflower, and she is quite well learned. She's very bookish. She enjoys intelligent conversation despite the fact that that is not something that women are praised for at this time. And she's pretty much a firecracker. Her parents have arranged a marriage for her and she's quite unhappy with this because she's pretty much never met this man. And as it turns out, he's not someone that you would particularly want to marry. And so she decides to come up with a plan to ruin herself. She intends to do this by using the perceived rakish persona of Nicholas St. Ives, the Marquess of Rothbury, who society talks about and considers a bit of a scandal. And she intends to just say that, you know, he snuck into my room and spent the night, and without him actually having done that. But the Marquess actually finds out about this and the two strike up an unlikely alliance and friendship that then turns into something more. I enjoyed the story and I enjoy Stacey Reid's writing, but there was just something about this one that didn't sit right with me and I haven't quite worked out what it was. It was the last book that I read this week, so I'm still sitting with it because I wanted to rate this higher and I don't know what it is that's stopping me from doing that. So I'm going to sit with it for a while. I also read Kingdom of the Wicked by Kerri Maniscalco. This is the first book in her new Kingdom of Wicked series. It was a 2020 release that I gave 4 stars. I did have a review copy from NetGalley that I needed to read and review, and I read this for the Read Digital Challenge to read and write a review of a book. This is a young adult historical paranormal story, and we follow Amelia and Victoria, who are twin sisters, and they come from a long line of Strege, or witches, in Italy. We get the whole story from Amelia's perspective, and one night she discovers that her sister has been murdered. This sets her down a path of revenge. She wants to find out who killed her sister and she wants to make them pay. And as a result, this includes her beginning to explore darker magic, which her family is not known for. As a result of this, she ends up crossing paths with Wrath, who is a prince of hell, or one of the wicked, who Amelia has been told all her life to avoid. And he ends up helping her to investigate her sister's murder. But with the wicked, nothing is ever kind of truly what it seems. And as they begin to cross paths with more of his brethren, Amelia begins to realize that maybe Wrath has his own motivations for helping her. I have to say with this book, the first 40% of it is really tough to get through. It's very heavy on the world building, but once you sort of get into the action, and to be honest, once Wrath appears as a main character and is in it for more than a couple of pages, you're good, because this then becomes really fast paced and really engaging. The story does end on a bit of a cliffhanger, so be aware of that going into it because it's the first book in a series. I will probably continue to read the series. I was intrigued enough by where the sort of last third of the story went to continue and see what Kerry Maniscalco does with this world. I also read To Seduce a Highlander by Kerrigan Byrne. This is the first book in the Highland Magic Historicals series. This is a collection of novella anthologies that she's put together, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I did read it for the Read Digital challenge to read a book with purple on the cover, and this collection of 3 novellas follows the McLaughlin brothers, Roderick, Connor and Finn, as they find their fated mates. So these stories are historical paranormal romance books. The brothers are berserkers, so they are men who have been cursed to turn into these very strong, very unthinking warriors when the situation calls for it. It is a fated mates, alpha males trope type set of stories, but they were fun and easy to read and entertaining. The next book that I gave 4 out of 5 stars was The Secret Chapter by Genevieve Cogman. This is the 6th book in the Invisible Library series, and in this particular book, Irene is recalled by the library for a secret mission to acquire a very rare book that is needed to stabilize and save the world where she did most of her schooling. This is a very special place to her. She has great memories of being there, so she wants to do everything that she can to help this world. This entails her and Kai traveling to a high chaos fae world where they unintentionally become part of a heist plan to steal something that is very important and very dangerous to the dragons. This one was super fun. I didn't realize it had a heist plot in it. It was really enjoyable. And I like being in this world, and I like the slow way that the dynamics and the politics and the world and universe is built up, because every time we come back to it, we just get a little bit more, and it's really great. Another book that I gave 4 out of 5 stars was Mind Possessed by Nalini Singh. This is book 4 in the Side Changeling series. I'm going to have a separate video for this, so I'm not going to talk about it in here, but this is Clay Bennett and Talon McCade's story. Clay is a Dark River Sentinel. That means we're back with the Leopard Pack. Looking back and reflecting on everything, I'm not sure the first 2 books are books that I enjoy, particularly being with the Leopard Pack. I'm not a huge fan of Lucas or Vaughn. However, it was nice to come back to Clay's book and realize, no, hang on, there were characters that I really did enjoy from the Dark River Pack. And I'm really excited about the next 2 books because they are probably my favorite characters from the Dark River Sentinels. So this was nice to revisit and to remember that, yeah, there were stories that I really liked early on, beyond just Judd's story. The first of my 4.5 star reads was The Rogue Not Taken by Sarah MacLean. This is the first book in the Scandal and Scoundrel series. I was reading this for Read Digital for the challenge to read a book by your favorite author. This is the story of Lady Sophie Talbot, who is the youngest of the Talbot sisters, who always find themselves in the scandal sheets in society because they're always just doing outlandish things. They are new to the ton and the titled group of people, I forget what that's called. And so they're already looked down upon for that because they're made money, they're not old money. At the beginning of the story, Lady Sophie walks in on her brother-in-law having an affair with some other woman at a party, and she takes great issue with this and publicly berates him in front of the ton, which is a big no-no because suddenly she is on the out and she's already had enough. She can't stand being in London. She misses her old life in the country, the simpler life, and so she decides that she's going to go back. And to do this, she ends up stealing the carriage of the Marquess of Everley, who she's had a brief interaction with, and he refused to help her. So she tricks everyone, takes his carriage, and starts on her way out of London. and then her paths obviously cross again with the Marquess, and it is their story. In this one, you have a very unhappy, very insecure hero who, as the result of some things that happened in his past, that deeply affects his relationship and his ability to form a relationship with Sophia. He constantly believes that she's trying to trick him into marriage. And Lady Sophia, by contrast, is very brave, very eager to live her own life. In a lot of ways quite naive, but she doesn't just sit back. She wants to protect her family, she wants to protect her sisters, and she wants to protect her own heart as well. The one thing that I really liked about this book were the chapter titles. Sarah McLean had some awesome puns as chapter titles, and every time I get to a new one, I was just laughing out loud. Another 4.5 star for me was For Real by Alexis Hall. This is book 3 in the Spires series. I read this for the Read Digital Challenge to read your newest acquired book. I believe this is the next book being discussed on Fated Mates, so I decided to download it and read it before the episode came out, because I'm quite a fan of Alexis Hall's work, and I've heard nothing but good things about this particular story. I'm going to put the trigger warnings out there to begin with. There is the death of a grandparent. It is a BDSM/kink book, and it's also a significant age gap between the two main characters. So this is a queer male-male romance between Lawrence, who is approaching 40 and used to be part of the BDSM scene, but has in recent years found it to be just something that he doesn't know whether he wants to be part of it anymore. He's quite jaded with it. Until one night at a party, he meets Toby, who is a 19-year-old dominant, who is just learning what it means to be that. Lawrence ends up taking him home, and they have a scene, and it's quite emotional for both of them, because for Toby, it's the first time someone's taken him seriously in his role, and for Lawrence, it's something that he needed. And then through a series of events, they end up seeing each other, despite Lawrence's best intentions. He's quite anxious about the age gap and the power dynamic between the two of them. Toby's quite persistent. And really the story is whether or not Lawrence can actually give his heart to Toby, not just his body. And I think it was a really interesting story in character dynamics, in power dynamics, and a look at the BDSM scene in a way that is not your typical in your club, lots of props all the time sort of scenes. So I really enjoyed it. Alexis Hall is great, and I do want to continue reading the other books in the Spires series. I do have book 1, I think, already on my Kindle. And then we come to my 5-star books. Only one of them was a new to me book, so I'm going to talk about that one first, and that is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. Are we shocked? Not even remotely. I read this for the Read Digital prompt to read a book that you meant to read in 2020, and honestly this will end up on my favourites of 2021 list, I'm telling you now. I will put out a trigger warning for some fatphobic language within the book, but a lot of that is the self-perception of the character who is making those comments, not other people around him. In fact, they are being quite body positive and very encouraging of him. So take that with a grain of salt. I don't think it was done in a way that was meant to be offensive. I think it was done to emulate the thoughts of people who do think that about themselves sometimes, but be aware of that going into it. We start off with Linus Baker, who is a very quiet man who lives in a very quiet house and has a very law-abiding job. He is a caseworker for the department in charge of magical youth, and his job is to go out and to oversee the government-managed orphanages for magical children. And then one day he is called in by extremely upper management to go out and assess the Messias Island orphanage, where 6 very dangerous magical children apparently reside, along with their caretaker, Arthur Panassus. This requires Linus to stay there for 2 weeks, and the longer that he stays there, he begins to see these children for who they really are, and to see Arthur for who he really is as well. And it is this slow shift of a character who has always followed the rules and always worked within the purview of his role, to now being someone who sees what's actually in front of him and what the implications of those rules that he's always followed actually are. It is a male-male romance, but that is a very slow burn, very quiet sort of sidestep in the story. The true star is sort of this very wholesome, very beautiful story about all of these characters. And I have to say that my favourite character in the story was Lucy, who is the 6-year-old Antichrist, and he was just precious, and I love him. My last 2 books are 5-star books, and they are all rereads. The first is Starry Eyes by Jen Bennett. This is a young adult contemporary story that follows Zori and Lennon, who used to be friends, became enemies, and in this story eventually become lovers. The two of them end up on a camping trip with some friends and then end up abandoned by said friends in the middle of nowhere. Zori had her heart set on attending a star party in a different part of the national park, and Lennon, who is quite an experienced hiker, offers to continue the walk through the national park and to get her to the star party on time. Along the way, they have to confront their feelings for one another and also confront the things that they've done to each other to hurt each other in the past, however unintentionally. And this has great communication. It is also incredibly sex positive. It is one of my all-time favorite young adult books, and I will continue to reread it every year. And then finally, I also read The Dry by Jane Harper, 5 stars. This is an Australian crime mystery novel set in rural Victoria. I read this book because I was going to see the film, which came out at the start of January, and I'm so glad that I reread it before I went to see the film. The film is a pretty good adaptation of this story, and it really encapsulates the environment. So if you ever want to know what it's like in rural Victoria, go see that film. This is the story of Federal Police Officer Aaron Falk, who returns to his hometown of Kiawarra in rural Victoria after the death of his childhood best friend Luke. Luke has apparently committed murder-suicide and killed his wife, his son, and himself, and left behind his infant daughter. Luke's parents don't believe that he could be responsible for that, and so they ask Aaron, who is a fraud police officer, to investigate the financials of the family. And along the way, Aaron begins to uncover some clues that lead him to believe that maybe this isn't as cut and dry as everyone first thought. It also brings up memories of the last time that Aaron was in Kiawarra, which was quite a traumatic experience because he and his father left after the death of one of Aaron's friends, and everyone believed that Aaron and his father were involved in that death. This is so atmospheric, so well written. It is one of my all-time favorite Australian books, and another book that I will continue to reread. I think this was reread 3. So that is everything that I've read in the last 9 days. In the comments below, feel free to let me know what you have been reading, or if you have read any of these books and you would like to talk about them. I'm really sorry for how light it has gotten because I'm filming this super early and the sun has just come up over the building and it's in a very awkward spot, but we'll just go with it. If you need to get in contact with me, all of my details are down below. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you are staying safe and healthy, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.